Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. We are here again for COMM Week Day 3. We have had some really great sessions over the past couple of days, and we've got some good ones in store for you again today. Just so that you know, we have live streams of all of the sessions, and we also have past recordings of the sessions available at pvamutv.org/COMM Week. So if there's anything you missed or that you'd like to revisit, feel free to go back and look at those previous sessions. And if you want to join us again this afternoon when we come back, we'll be at the same link once again. Our theme this year is The World is Yours. And the session we have to start off today is a session titled A World of Opportunities, Careers in Public Media. Now, for some of our students who are in the audience, the idea of public media might seem like an unfamiliar concept at first, but there's a good chance that you've encountered public media at some point in your life, probably in many cases in your life. If you grew up watching PBS Kids, that's public media. If you've ever watched an NPR Tiny Desk concert, that series is a product of public media. And if you've ever listened to KPVU-FM, our campus radio station, once again, that's public media. Speaking of KPVU, our moderator this morning is Mr. John Hughes, who is the general manager of our radio station. And so at this time, I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Hughes to introduce you to our panelists and to moderate our session.
Is public media. What is public media and what does it have to offer? Though often overlooked, the world of public media offers both high quality content and an array of career opportunities for students in communications. In this session, we will hear from a panel of experts representing a broad range of professional vocations in public radio and television, including, and this is, we're especially excited about this, including perspectives of young professionals in public media. So what we are wanting you to take away from this panel presentation are the following. 1, why work in public media? 2, the importance of public media. 3, how does public media make a difference for you personally and for the betterment of your community? 4, an understanding of the products of public media, the programs and services. And 5, and ultimately, how can you find your way to an opportunity in public media, especially in the time of the pandemic? So thank you for your attention and consideration of this presentation, and let's get started. First on the mic, we have Ms. Aisha Rashid Hyman, representing Public Broadcasting Atlanta, and Ms. Hyman serves as the Vice President of Business Development and Planning. Aisha?
John, I'm thrilled to be here. Should I go ahead and start?
Please do.
Okay, so I wanted to start by just telling you a little bit about how I came to public media, the highlights of my professional journey in public media, and then what I get to do right now. Who's right here on the screen right now, Stacey Wiggins. So I was a student, a young person, a teenager actually, when I first met Stacey. And one of the things that she's always done for me is saw potential and opportunities for me that I didn't even see for myself. And so she's been what I call a sponsor, not somebody who just mentors you and kind of coaches you and gives you advice, but somebody who actually opens doors for you. Says, okay, not only do I see this opportunity for you, I'm going to help you get it. I'm going to help you get in it. So Stacey Wiggins did that for me. And then Mel Jones helped me along the way as well. So I'm really excited to be here with some of my mentors and coaches and sponsors. And Wandy's been a coach and a mentor for me too. And actually, since I'm mentioning mentoring, I'm really proud to have Jamie and LaShawn and Alfonso here because I want to do the same thing for them that Wandy, Stacey, Mel, and John have done for me. Is full circle moment. So that mentoring and coaching and identifying someone who's not going to just coach you and mentor you, but also willing to sponsor you, I think is really important. And that's really what got me into public media. I had not thought about it as a professional path at all. I grew up watching PBS Kids, and actually PBS was the only station that my dad would let us watch when we were kids. So I really didn't even know there was other kind of media. We knew the McNeil-Lehrer News Hour, back this old news show, and then like the Jeffersons and the Cosby Show. That was it. That's all we were allowed to watch on TV. And then our parents only allowed us to watch NPR. So you notice a theme there. So public media was very much a part of my consciousness, but I didn't think of myself as a media professional. When I went to college, I actually always try to help me kind of get a position there. She'd always find a spot for me. So I worked with her at actually different companies before coming to Georgia Public Broadcasting. And when she got the GPB, I could tell from the way she talked about it that she found a special lane for herself professionally, and she wanted to open that lane up for me. It just, when she described it, it sounded much more exciting than any other kind of job that she had done. And so it just sounded like something I wanted to do. So when my life kind of aligns with the job opportunity, because by that time I had a baby. But when my life kind of aligns with the opportunity, I came and tried it out. And I just got bitten with the bug. When I got there, I realized, oh my gosh, this is where I should have been all this time. I've been wasting time. I wish I had gotten here 10 years ago. Absolutely loved it. Here's why I loved it. Public media allows you to do a lot of different things at once. Because most of the public media stations are smaller compared to like a CNN or an NBC or HBO or something, some bigger media company, because PBS and NPR stations are smaller, you end up having to wear a lot of hats. But if you want to have variety in your job and wear a lot of hats, this is the perfect place for you. I had never done any on-air hosting. That became one of my primary responsibilities. And they provided me with all the training and coaching and support and resources that I needed to learn how to do it really well. So now I parlay that skill into a lot of other things that I do. So I learned how to be an on-air television and radio host. I became a writer, a producer. I already had some fundraising skills, but they took it up to the highest level that I could take it to in terms of fundraising skills. So I got to learn how to do a lot of different things. And the other cool thing about working in public media, when you get to that point where you're kind of bored and you're ready to try something new and you're like, okay, I've mastered this thing, so I'm ready to do something new. There's always something new, always some new project. There's never a dull moment, especially if you work at a station that's a joint like Z, radio and TV, because it's news. Radio is driven by news. So the pace is fast. There's always some new breaking story. There's always some new series, television series, or documentary films to promote, raise money around, market, develop interstitial content around. So there's always something new. You never get bored. So that's how I found my way. That's what I've loved about it. Some of my highlights most of my highlights have been with Stacey. We won national awards for the fundraising work that we were doing. And what I'm really proud of is that we were pioneers. We were raising money around content that spoke specifically to an African American audience. Nobody else in the public media system was doing that at that time. And we were winning, we were setting records, fundraising and revenue records. We were showing the public media system that there is a diverse audience that would support public media and watch public television if you create the content, if you speak to that audience specifically. So not only did we get to be a part of really cool industry, we got to change the game. And I got to tell you, there's no better feeling to point at something and say, I did that. I made that happen. I made it better. I made it better for the next generation. So you have the opportunity to do that now, coming in, kind of picking up where folks like us are kind of getting to that point of like almost retirement age. You know, we want to hand this to you, right? We want to give this to the next generation to pick it up and take it to the next level, because there's all these new frontiers that need to be explored with media, with the digital aspects of media, with content development. There's so much room for you to take this to the next level. So I'm excited to be here to talk to you about that, answer any questions you have, and I'll just give a quick little tidbit about what I'm doing now. So what I just actually was promoted into actually last week was a new opportunity to really be entrepreneurial and develop new revenue streams for public media. So you've seen pledge drives before, and you might see the tote bags and things like that. But really that's become kind of passe and old school. And so one of the things that the public media world is trying to do is figure out what's that new way of engaging people who are going to invest in it. Basically your generation, they wanted to know like what are the ways that you're going to be willing to support public media. So that means there is a place for you here. Nobody's going to be able to answer that question better than you. You are the audience that they're really trying to reach. So I hope you'll consider reaching out to your local PBS or NPR station and looking to see if there's an internship or volunteer opportunity or even a job for you, because there probably is one.
Risha, let me dig in a little bit with you on a couple of points. Can you extend, and you actually intimated this, but can you extend the idea, the point, the reference of your influencers and what influences you in your business?
So, yeah. So what influences us? Absolutely. I would say this in two ways. What influences is definitely our audience. Public media, because we're publicly funded, our audience, our listeners, and our viewers are the ones who really dictate what we put on the air and what we can afford to put on the air. And I think a lot of people don't know that it's your interests, the things that you care about, the things that you're passionate about, that's what your public media station is supposed to be providing for you. And you have every right to call or email or post a tweet or on your social, a note to your station and say, hey, I don't see people that look like me. I don't see content that express the things that are important to me. Where is it? And it's our obligation to provide that for you. And I think that I don't know if a lot of people are empowered or know that they're empowered that way. Not just influence, dictate to your station what exactly is on the air and what we're doing in the community. That actually, we're here for you. We're here to serve our audience. So most definitely our audience influences us. And then our donors influence what we do, right? So if we can't afford to pay for the new season of the Henry Louis Gates program or the new season of the kids shows, we won't be able to bring them. So donors absolutely have a lot of say and a lot of influence in what we do.
Let me pick your brain a little bit more. What programs, over the course of time since you've been in public media, had a profound impact and or effect on you personally?
I absolutely want to be the next Jennifer Lawson. that is my goal in life. That is absolutely a still dream of mine. I still got dreams and goals and things I really want to do. I've done a lot of great stuff, but there's still things on my list that I'm still hustling to do. Um, Jennifer produced this series called Africa that absolutely like mind blown. Like just especially at the time that she did it. I was just like enthralled with that show. You know, my parents were very Afrocentric and we read books and we had African art and African clothes and the whole thing, but I had never traveled to Africa. So that show really kind of opened my whole entire mind to what was possible, not just in the understanding of the African continent and culture and history and all of that, but also what a producer is, what a producer can do. That was the game changer for me. And so when Stacy told me that I get to meet Jennifer Lawson, I was like, oh, I'm in. I'm in. Like I like, you know, so I tracked her down. I was like, hey, I want to meet you. And what I love about those media is this is the kind of system where, you know, you can track down that producer and make that person your mentor, and they will take your call. They will respond to your email. They'll wrap their arm around you and say, okay, girl, I'm going to show you how I did what I did. I don't know that it's that same way in some other kinds of media companies where they're much larger, they're much more layers of politics internally and stuff like that. Like my CEO, I can call her right now and say, hey, I got this idea. I don't know that you could do that at some of the other media companies. So Jennifer definitely was the one that just really kind of got me excited about learning about the power of media, what you can do with media, how to bring your ideas to life. Sometimes it's a small project, and sometimes it's a humongous project like Jennifer's. I've been able to do small projects, and I'm really proud of that. But I want to get to that point where I can do the big, you know, sweeping projects, cinematic type projects like what she's done.
Awesome, Aisha. Stand by because we're going to swing back to you in this segment. But next on the mic is another long-term colleague of mine, Stacy Wiggins. Stacy currently is part of our home team here at KPVU. She is the producer and host of KPVU's Latin Soul, the Latin Jazz Edition. And in addition to that, and if you haven't caught Latin Soul, just be sure to tune in to KPVU, 4 p.m. Central Time. 4 p.m. Central Time for 2 hours is the Latin Soul, Latin Jazz Edition hosted by Masani, our very own Stacey Wiggins. And then for 3 additional hours, we have Latin Soul, the bilingual edition, hosted by Gila Gonzalez. But we're here today, we're here to hear from Stacey Wiggins, who is, in addition to being the producer and host of KPVU's Latin Soul, she's also a nonprofit consultant. Stacey.
Well, greetings all. I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Aisha, for the shout out. It's been a pleasure working with you over the years. And Wandy, John, and Mel also. And Marquis too, because I've been working with him for the last few years. It's been a pleasure working with him as well here at KPVU. But I have like a 20 plus year career in public media. I have to think about like how long it's been because it doesn't feel like that. But I've always had an affinity for PBS, you know, growing up in northern New Jersey, watching WNET, and then so because of that, it just piqued my interest to continue to learn more. So not only was I managing customer service, but I had to understand how the fundraising worked and all of the things that were done on their fundraising, everything that was done in development, because really that was the foundation for the rest of the organization. Although Georgia Public Broadcasting is actually a state agency, it's a state authority, but the money for all of the programming services, TV and radio, that came from money that we raised. But as a customer service manager, I had to make sure that we were handling our audiences and our members properly. And also what I realized when I arrived there is that we were leaving money on the table because we weren't really, addressing people's needs once we figured all of that out. What I did was I assessed the needs of my department. I reached out to colleagues, just like Aisha said, people give you the shirt off their back. Whatever you need, I'll help you. And then I submitted my proposal, was given the green light to create centralized customer service, which turned into revenue generating, which turned into, I became development manager, then development director, and I had a kick 18. And as development director, I was responsible for direct marketing, on-air fundraising, volunteer services, database management, and our team was made up of mostly of African-American female managers, and that was something that was unheard of in PBS stations. And I will say that, and proudly say that, I had a fantastic team. We were known for high quality output, high performance and fundraising, surpassing goals consistently. And like Aisha said, we were award winning. We were the very first to fundraise those Henry Louis Gates programs, African American Lives. We brought Henry Louis Gates to GPB, and this Wandi Lawson was our host and moderator. It was fantastic. And then, because I got my job down, and it was about being creative and keeping what works, getting rid of what didn't work. That's what we were known for. Then I had the opportunity to do more. I learned how to produce TV and radio. I was a board operator in radio, thanks to John Hughes. And I edited, I ran camera, Chiron, still store more. I just made sure that I knew how to do a little bit of everything. And it really served me across the years, because I wouldn't be on the air now at KPVU. Become a host and producer, and it turned into a 14-year run of a show called The Gas Spot. So it's been amazing, and Aisha shared with you what she came in the door with. I came in the door with this customer service management skills, and look what all of that turned into. But I will say this is the last part of what I want to share. What sealed the deal for me was when I went to my very first PBS development conference. And I walked into the Great Hall, and there was Sonia Manzano, Maria from Sesame Street. And she was on the podium, and she said, without development professionals like you, there's no Sesame Street. There's no program. You make it happen. You make it possible. And I looked around, everybody's crying. I said, I named my people. I'm here. And so from there, it's been just beautiful. And even though, I'm working for KPVU, but I'm still have my foot in the door of public media, and because I love it, I always will. And I'm just thankful to be here. So,
let me get you and Aisha, if you would, to tag team a bit of this. And again, let me reference the enormity of the enterprise that both of you worked at and managed the good part of the enterprise to, great success. We're talking about an enterprise that includes 9 public television stations, and I guess it's up to 16, 17 public radio stations, both NPR member stations and 9 PBS stations. And I know the two of you, your eyes might go to the back of your head when you hear me say this, but my reference with you doing your life-saving God's work was, there's no finance, there's no romance before finance.
You're right.
And I have to give you two, big ups for, providing that measure of infrastructure and expertise to Georgia Public Broadcasting, and now Aisha, with you at Public Broadcasting Atlanta, they could not do what they do to the point that you made, Stacey and Aisha, without the fundraising. In addition, I would extend that to community engagement in enterprises that both of you have orchestrated, developed, and managed. But if you could speak a bit more to both of you, the fundraising and community support enterprises that you were responsible for.
Stacey, you want to talk about DPD first, since it was larger, and then I'll come down to the PBA scale?
Sure. I'll say that because we had a creative team, I keep saying that, but that's everything. Looking at what has worked, what doesn't work, and understanding, digging into your data and knowing your audience. What they say, show me, you know me. That means so much. And so we were fortunate that we could, figure out the types of events, and that's what those events that you have extend the programming experience. It deepens the relationship with the audience, and it shows them that you care and understand what they want, what they care about. Because when it comes to public media, it's just like going to Pier 1 Import. I worked there for a long time, part-time. And you don't need nothing to Pier 1. It's like a PBS station. You don't have to give, have to watch. It's just not necessary in your life. But so for the people who donate and who participate, it means so much. And that's why on your side, you have to make sure that you show these people that you value their investment in your organization and your mission. And so having, thought-provoking events and creative events and fun events and showing people, here's all this cool programming that we have, and it's a reflection of you. And we know that it means something to you, so that's why we're doing it. And I think I was most proud when we would have events in DPD, because we were fortunate to be in this beautiful facility with a huge studio that's seated, 250 people or more. Mm-hmm. And we just had incredible events. Even as Jennifer Lawson, like I said before, we pre-screened the Africa event at GPD, and we had African drummers and dancers. It blew a lot of people's minds, but it was fantastic. You know what I mean? And that's how it should be. You show the audience, like, here's what this programming means, and you can touch it locally. That's everything. So that's just a short version. I don't go too long with it.
So I just want to reiterate something that John said, because I think it's important that Stacey led the team, and I was really honored to be a part of the team that provided the revenue, the money that we needed to pay for 16 radio stations and 9 TV stations across the state of Georgia. So we were supporting 25 entities, 25 business entities. Once you rocking and rolling at that level of business, you can do anything. So that's what was that, a $30 million budget? And our portion of it was a third, at least a third of it, sometimes a little bit more, depending upon what was going on at the station. And then my part of it was like a good chunk of that third. And so when you gain confidence and wow, I can be responsible for a business, a multi-million-dollar business, you can do anything. So when I got the opportunity to go to Public Broadcasting Atlanta, I knew there would be different challenges, but I already had the confidence from the work that I had done with Stacey at Georgia Public Broadcasting. Because like I said, we were rocking and rolling in a $30 million company, but we were the best at it. I'm just going to say it. We were among the best at it. We were winning national awards at it and diversifying it. So we were not only winning awards, being the best at it, but making it better as we went. So by the time I came to PBA, I was like, oh, I'm about to do this, because it was a much smaller company. Mm-hmm. But the challenges were different. So Public Broadcasting Atlanta, so GPD is the state organization, the state public media network, and then Public Broadcasting Atlanta really serves Atlanta. It focuses just on the Atlanta metro area. So it's smaller, but it gives you different opportunities. So with the business model, it's pretty much the same. As Stacey said, we are really tapping into the community and asking the listeners, the people who listen to NPR here locally and people who watch PBS here locally, and asking them to donate. They don't have to. And when somebody doesn't have to do something in order to get the service, you really have to be smart and creative, as Stacey said, about how you engage them, how you make it enticing and exciting for them to want to be a part of what you're doing and invest in what you're doing. And there got to be some perks, right? Some things that they receive as a consequence of giving and investing in what you're doing. So that's something that I think we're always thinking about is how do we make what we do fun and engaging? We also have to think about the marketing of everything we do. Before you go, you publicize something, you got to think about the design and the logo and the colors and the words and the music and the visuals. You got to think about all of that. So there's a marketing aspect to it. And as John mentioned, the community engagement piece. I think especially now, communities are expecting institutions, especially public institutions, to really represent them, meet their needs. They want to, anything that you feel like it should be there for your community, you want to have a say in it. Audiences want to have a say in it. So I think the public media system as a whole is really trying to figure out how to do a better job of that, making sure that we're representing all of our audience. And I'll be more specific. For example, when the shootings here happened in Atlanta, one of the things that a lot of the leaders of the Asian and Pacific Islander community were saying about media in general, not just public media or not just a specific station, but about media in general, is that media had not really been telling the story of the violence that community had been experiencing for the past year. So again, I just want to make that point that part of our job, a real important part of our job, is also making sure that we're telling everyone's story, that we're not missing anybody, we're not leaving any communities behind. So there is that really important community engagement piece of what we do.
Awesome. Thank you both of you. Great weigh-in, great presentation. And I know that there'll be probably a bevy of questions that will come back to you from a listening viewing audience, and we'll get back to you shortly. But next up is Wandi Lawson. And in the interest of full disclosure, if you haven't already recognized, there are a bevy of folk who are Georgia bred, Georgia located. We all work at one time or another at Georgia Public Broadcasting in different capacities. And I'm happy and proud to introduce one of our colleagues who was, in many instances, the face of Georgia Public Broadcasting, and someone who, the public came to know and to trust, and to the extent where much of the fundraising success that Georgia Public Broadcasting realized by virtue of having Wandi be the face of Georgia Public Broadcasting, be the voice of Georgia Public Broadcasting, be the presence of Georgia Public Broadcasting. That resulted in, just terrific advancement for public media, for Georgia Public Media. In addition to her talent and abilities and tenure as a person who provided that presence on air, and Wandi is also a seasoned producer. And to the extent you'll hear from her today, her experience and expertise with respect to producing. So it's my pleasure to produce another one of my colleagues, Wandi Lawson. Hello, Wandi.
Hey there, John. Thank you so much. This is no more delightful than anything I've seen in a long time, because I've seen so many of my colleagues here. We've worked together so many years, and it's just wonderful to be here. So
and Wandi, I'm sorry, I do need to interrupt you, because I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I neglected to mention your title, which is important and impressive, and folk need to know it. You are currently the Chief Cultivation Officer for the Virtue Collective, right?
that is correct. You're absolutely correct.
Fantastic.
So I want to talk a little bit today because my colleagues have done such a phenomenal job. Stacy and Aisha, all of you on here. I mean, Marquis, I remember when Marquis was still a student. So it's lovely to see everyone progressing in their career. And so I want to talk just a little bit about those of us who have decided to pursue careers as storytellers. So the money that's being raised in the way that Aisha and Stacy are describing goes into the telling of stories. And as they both said, whether or not that story is a complete arc or some sliver of the story has a lot to do with race. And so I encourage people of color, African American people, to become storytellers. What's race got to do with it? Well, as you know, you've all studied literature and so forth. So you know that in a story, we have a certain arc, a way of telling that story. We have the beginning, we have escalating action, we have conflict, some resolution, and then of course the end of the story. I'm going to take you quite swiftly through just 3 examples here of how that might work if you are in fact a Black storyteller, as I am. And actually, I've worked for more than 30 years in print, TV, and radio, but I actually became aware that one could be a Black storyteller when I was about 7 years old, because I won the Ebony Junior writing contest. I had heard some things about ancient Africa, like Aisha, I come from a family of Pan-African traditions. So we had studied the ancient kingdoms of Africa. I told a story, sort of a sci-fi. What would happen if you took a hot air balloon and you could go back to Songhai, you could go to Mali and whatnot. And I won $50 and a gold watch. So that was my first inkling that you could be a Black storyteller. I went to Howard University. My introduction to public broadcasting is because I was a student producer at WHM-TV, now WHUT. And so in the 1980s, I had the great benefit of being mentored and really trained by seasoned Black professionals, Jennifer Lawson among them, people who came and really made sure that we knew that we could become Black storytellers. It wasn't so strange for us to have such an aspiration. But let me tell you, that's not actually very common. You see, because although racial and ethnic minorities make up 40% of the US population, they don't make up such a large proportion of the storytellers. Way back before any of the audience was born, 1978, the American Society of News Editors set a goal that by the year 2000, newsrooms would reflect the diversity of the communities that they serve. It didn't make it anywhere near that. Today, 75% of journalists are non-Hispanic whites. So who is telling the story? And we have to ask ourselves, what is the impact when 50% of the newsroom staff are in fact white men? So the story, being able to tell the story, has a lot to do with how it actually shows up. Now, I was a beneficiary of the fact that there was some drive in the 70s, 80s, and a little bit into the 90s as to making sure that these newsrooms were diverse. I was actually a Dow Jones Minority News reporting intern, and so from the age of 18 to 21, I got to go to papers around the country, and I was able to report and write and also be mentored by some of the great reporters of the New York Times, Washington Post, and others. But these kinds of programs actually, as you know, because you all are students now, they're not nearly as prolific as they were. I can even tell you, we were paid well. We got a weekly salary for going and doing these things, and we were mentored well. So today, how is it that the voice of Black people is going to continue to show up in this in the storytelling landscape? As I proceeded, since we're talking about public broadcasting, I came through the CNN newsroom. I was in Turner Broadcasting, and then one day a funny thing happened. I was walking down the hall, and a gentleman at Turner Broadcasting said, "Hey, they're about to start producing a Japanese language series over at Georgia Public Broadcasting, and I know you speak French, so you should interview." Now, what French and Japanese have to do with each other, I do not know. But in any case, I did become the coordinating producer of a series called Pure Shy, and we produced that for several years. It's still, of course, being used. I see high school students even today continuing to use that to learn Japanese. And from there, I did a variety of different jobs for Georgia Public Broadcasting. I became the senior political correspondent for their political series Lawmakers. Interestingly, though, and I'll say this more at the end as well, you might think entrepreneurially, because although I've worked with public broadcasting stations for decades, I've never actually worked for a public broadcasting station. So the Virtues Collective, for instance, is a company that I own, as well as Red Productions. But let's talk a little bit more about storytelling. This is the most recent piece that I've done for public broadcasting. It's airing now on WGBH, called Race, Amity, and the Other Tradition. And as Stacey and Aisha were saying, we have responsibility for making sure that the programming reflects the community that we're in. So I know that, for instance, WGBH has already begun airing this, and as of tomorrow, April 1st, it'll be available to other stations, public broadcasting stations. But I also have taken the liberty of sending this out to my network and saying, get on the website, call the station, because they don't necessarily air race, amity, and the other tradition, though they should, because it's all about these wonderful stories. This particular segment about Rosenwald schools and how Julius Rosenwald and Booker T. Washington came to organize those. So the storytelling landscape is very, very vast, but as you know, it has these racialized elements that people tend to take for granted. You know, we don't even question the fact that, you know, the way we tell the story has all of these racial elements. If a person is white and commits a crime, as you saw on the left side, you just say that a man was accused. And if the man was perchance black, Latino, etc., we then, of course, want to make sure that we emphasize the race of the person in doing that. And because it's been done so long in America, people just accept it. Well, here's 3 short stories about how race impacts the storytelling process. The first in the early 1990s, I was about 23 working at CNN at the time. They produced an extraordinarily racist piece of journalism called Kids and Crime. I've searched high and low for it. I can't seem to find any record of it. I have a beta cassette of something we made as a response. But in any case, what it was supposed to be a look across the country in the 1990s. There was so much emphasis on carjacking and gangs and drug dealing and so forth. And so they scoped the landscape and they profiled criminals, young criminals. And I won't go through the whole thing, but they called it balanced because they included some white criminals as well. But in the case, for instance, of the white teens who had been convicted of a crime, they showed their mother, and she was white. You feel a lot of empathy for her. She was crying. She was a single parent. They showed the black mother. She was beating her son with the same comb that she had been braiding his hair with. He had a colostomy bag out of his body because he had been shot. The entire piece was awful. It culminated with a young man who'd been accused of murder, 14 years old. And I don't know how they got the right to interview him prior to trial, but they did. And he was describing how he enjoyed busting a cap into someone, etc. The young man obviously very, very traumatized. And at the end, they zoomed into his mouth, letterboxed it, and slow-moed him laughing. So in response, Black journalists at CNN, including Prairie and a bunch of others, we actually went and demanded some recourse. But I will tell you in the early 1990s that CNN handled this by giving us the assignment of producing media to help educate our colleagues to be more racially sensitive. We did this on our own time without pay, and that was the resolution. I consider that to be hoodwink today. I would never do anything like that again. But it taught me a lot. I was 23. So let's go forward. 2017, I saw that there was a racist video shown in a school in my community. My children go to this school. Because I am a Black storyteller, not only can I work for someone else and tell their story, but I also can make sure that things that happen in my own community also get raised to the level of concern. And in this case, we were able to ensure that everyone in the school received anti-bias training, all except the teacher that showed the video. He chose to resign instead. And the school district simply put him in another school and put him in an elementary school instead. So you see, the arc of the story doesn't always bend towards justice, but little by little. This last one I wanted to show you, this is 2020. Right after the killing of George Floyd, I was part of a team that was producing media that was looking into the community surrounding the place where the murder took place. On this team were 5 people. 2 of them were white men, 1 was a white woman, and there were 2 Black women. Now, in telling these stories, we were going beyond the fact that we knew that a murder had been committed, and we were looking to see how is the community restoring itself. In the course of one of these packages, this shot that you see here, Tony's truck, as I call it. This is a bullet hole in Tony's truck. And for some reason, in the middle of a story about community building and food banks, there was this bullet hole in Tony's truck, and there was the story of domestic violence between 2 Black people. Now, neither of these stories was very well developed. The producers that had bought this, I kept asking questions. Who were the people? What were the conditions by which Tony's truck was shot? And frankly, what does this have to do with the community food bank and all these other things that we're studying? At first, everyone said, "One, this is sexy. We have to get this in," including the other Black producer. But as time went on and we discussed it more, the other black producer told me the turning point for her was when one of the white male producers said, Lonnie, let's leave this in. I'm a white guy from the suburbs, and this stuff interests me. That's not how we tell stories. Remember, the arc of the story, it includes the things that actually make up the story, not extraneous points that stereotype a given group of people or in some way entertain those of us who don't consider ourselves to be members of that group. So in conclusion, I was just looking at this piece that was done by a sociologist. He says, criminalizing, infantilizing, sexualizing, essentializing, and othering Black people as stereotypes lead to their dehumanization. In other words, their lives matter less than their counterparts, if at all, when those representations go unchecked or unchallenged. So as a Black storyteller, I think it is our job to challenge those things. And we don't have to do it in ways that you can go about your life, earn your salary, have a very nice life, but make sure that the story is balanced. It's like when I ask people what all of these Black people, for instance, on the screen have in common, they often call out, are they politicians? Are they guess a few things, but they're actually all Black economists. So when we want to tell the story, we'll make sure it's a complete story. So in closing, I just want to tell you, if you wish to tell the story, read a lot, write a lot, listen a lot, strive to understand well history, healthcare, economics, politics, etc. Don't let people hoodwink you when you go to conduct an interview and tell you things that are not true because you don't know any more than that. Observe critically the stories that are being told. And importantly, college students do not accrue large amounts of debt. When I came to CNN, the starting salary was $15,000 a year. No one could believe that a college graduate was going to work for $15,000 a year, but I did, and it was one of the finest moves I ever made in my career. But I couldn't have done that if I loved bling and I had carried a lot of debt with me. And the final piece is just to act entrepreneurially. Whether or not you're working for a company or whether you actually are working for yourself, think about that. Think about why it is that you're producing the things that you're producing. Why is it that you're telling the stories you're telling? And remember, you have a lot more control over this than most people will tell you. That's in public broadcasting as well as if you decide to pursue the route of commercial broadcasting. So those are just a few things I wanted to share with you. Thank you for the invitation to do so.
Awesome, Imwani. There is one point, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like you to extend a bit, and that's your time at Howard University. Obviously, Prairie A&M University is an HBCU, I would say, proudly. And, if you wouldn't mind speaking to the traditions and the opportunities connected to your time at Howard as a student, and share with our Prairie A&M University students, what that meant for you.
Well, HBCU students, you know that the majority of Black professionals emerge from these schools. So anyone who tells you that the time for them has passed is sorely mistaken. The reason for this, of course, is because it may be the only time in your life that you get to be in an environment that is fully supported by Black people. You will have professors, of course, who wish to mentor you fully and make sure that you achieve all that you can be. You're not in a classroom where you have to worry about, is it my work or is it my melanin that is making this the grade possible or impossible? So I'm very thankful to Howard University, particularly since I was born in Portland, Oregon, with I think about a whopping 4% Black population. And I grew up in the Silicon Valley. I think we might have gotten up to about 6%. So going into Howard University was for me an amazing opportunity. I'm so thankful in particular to those who mentored me at WHMM at the time. Some of the time I was furious with them. They would make us do things like wrap and re-wrap cable, and I would be like, this is not the Booker T. Washington School of Communications. Why are we doing all of this? I'm a journalist. I don't need to wrap cable. Yes, I do. So be very, very attentive to your professors and those who are mentoring you now, but I think they do have your best interest. And I'm very thankful to be a Bison myself, and I'm really proud of those of you who are also pursuing your degrees at HBCU.
Could I put an exclamation point on that? HU, you know.
Thanks, John.
Awesome. Thank you, Wandi. Next up is Mr. Mel Jones. And again, Mel is still a colleague, but a former colleague at Georgia Public Broadcasting, again, in the interest of full disclosure, part of the through line today of Georgia Public Broadcasting alums. And Mel comes to us with a really special experience and expertise and professional background. While at Georgia Public Broadcasting, Mel served as, and I say this, there's probably a more generous title, but he served as Director of Human Resources, and I would even up that to VP of Human Resources. But to the point of, while it wasn't, his in his basket to produce, to tell stories, to essentially produce content and or to do the other myriad of things that come by way of public radio and public television, we could not have had the success that we experienced. I would say all of us sitting here in this panel today as public media professionals. Personally, we wouldn't have had the experience, the length of service, just the good mental health, were it not for Mel Jones serving as in the capacity that he did as Director of Human Resources. And so Mel, you're up next, and thank you for your presence here on the panel today.
Well, thank you, Don, and I have to say that not only am I honored, I'm actually grateful to the practice and I feel a tremendous sense of pride looking at something that you're and Don, you folks really getting to know the other panel members. I am now energized because of the previous presentation. I'm just absolutely blown away and excited. I'm excited also for the students who benefit from this, because I would say that this is the perfect time to look at public broadcasting as an option, as a career option for yourself. There is a need, and Wanda just really hit on in a very, very in-depth way in talking about having storytellers in the organization. And storytelling goes beyond just the content that's presented. Storytelling goes with the teamwork that you do. So let's talk about how you get in there first. And that's what my primary role is, getting you in. And then once you get in, how do you advance, how do you develop, and how do you help somebody else come in behind you? So where do you look for these jobs? Obviously, the first place that you're going to look is going to be your local broadcast organization. But I will challenge you to look well beyond your current horizon, because there are opportunities throughout the United States and even international opportunities to you in public broadcasting. So you may want to look at the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, where I was looking on their website this morning. They have a plethora of jobs throughout the United States, to include places like Alaska and somewhere nobody really wants to be, Hawaii, and other places like that. And look at the areas where you could really make a difference. And that's usually in areas where there aren't as many people who would like to. We talked about the percentage of minority members in the profession. So you look at areas that may not be very attractive to you at this point, but you can really benefit from being there, and they can benefit from you being there. I told the panel members yesterday that I have been working with, or I had worked with a public broadcasting station in West Virginia. And West Virginia has about a population of about 2% African American in the population. And they are concerned about diversity. And diversity comes in the form of a lot more than just what ethnic group you're a member of. It is about your life experiences and the things that you can bring to the table. So when you look at getting at areas where you can get a job, look at what you can bring with you and what value you can add to that organization. And in turn, the organization can add value to you. So I mentioned corporation public broadcasting, the local broadcasting outlet. You may want to look at media jobs. And the hottest thing going on right now, Indeed seems to have jobs for everybody, everywhere. So look and make that research, and intense research, something that skill that you would have picked up there at Prairie. Make that and make that research intense. Once you get once you zero in on a job that you know that you really want to get, make sure that somebody else knows that you are interested in that job and that that you feel that you can add value by not just your current skill set, but your potential. That somebody else could be a person who's currently mentoring you. It could be somebody that's within your social circle. Could be somebody who's in that industry that you may not even know yet. So you look at areas, look at platforms like Indeed and people that you think that you can approach and just let them know that you're interested, that you have value, that you have skills, that you have attributes that could help that organization. And I'm going to assume, I always had the assumption that if somebody responded to me applying for the job, they really wanted to hire me. And so you don't let anybody determine whether or not they want to hire you. You determine that. You tell them, here's what you're going to get. And you do that in your preparations well before you put that application in. So you do your research of the organization, the people in the organization, the mission of the organization, and where do you think you will fit. Even though you're targeting a particular job, you may fit in many other areas. And I'm going to go back to what Alicia and Stacy and then Wanda said. They all started off doing something way different than what they're doing now and what they ended up doing. As an example, I'll use myself as an example. I was director of human resources, but I also worked with them on the pledge team. So I learned to operate a camera, worked with them in radio. So I did on-air pledge with radio, some drop-ins, and some other things. Also, I was never a storyteller or a producer or content developer, but I was a consumer. So I had an opinion. And so I inserted myself in areas that would have to do with what would be programmed for the station. So my point is, when you go in, see what other areas you think you may be interested in or that you can add value to, regardless of where you start. I'll make a point about interviewing because this is probably the most intimidating part of your career that ever exists. Is going in to sell yourself to somebody that you don't know. And that comes with preparation. And the first preparation that you want to have, no matter what your background is you want to make the best impression that you possibly can when you walk in the door. You only get that one time to make that first impression. And it's got to be good. So you practice that. And you get somebody to help you practice that. You practice well on how you practice on how you're going to walk in, what you're going to say when you walk in, and have yourself prepared with knowledge, again, about the organization and even about people in the organization. Once you're in, because I'm going to assume that if you apply, you're going to get in. Once you're in, that's when you want to be looking to prepare for your next area. Every day that you go in to that job is another interview opportunity for the next position. So make sure that you have that in your mind each day that you go into it. That when you become a team member, that you want to be the best team member that you can be, and that you're preparing yourself for the next step. Don't be afraid to volunteer. That's how all of these folks ended up where they are right now. And sometimes a volunteer experience may take you out of your real comfort zone, but that's okay. Do it anyway. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't, but more often than not, you can walk away with an experience that you otherwise would not have done. And you want to make that work to your advantage. I'm not going to take up all of the time, but I want to point out something that's very important today, because we all have this kind of this activity. That's social media. Every employer that's looking to work with you, to hire you, is going to look at your social media background. And your social media background creates a life that of its own. So you can say something on social media. It can be interpreted in a million different ways. So you want to make sure that before you go in to any organization, that you know what's in the content of your social media, and anything that you can clean up, get it cleaned up before they get a chance to look at it. Because that may be one of the ways that they will define you. And because you are coming in as a minority, I always assume that somebody's always going to be looking for a reason to say no. And saying no, when somebody tells you no, it doesn't mean that's the no. So if you get the answer no, be prepared to come back again and again. I don't want to take up any more time, John, but if you have some questions, go ahead.
We're going to hold questions until we get to the end of the session. I know, first of all, I want to thank you for that insight. But I know that we have a bevy of questions that have been stacking up on our chat line. And Dr. Bacco, I think we're going to hold the questions until the end of the session. Thanks, Mel. Next up on our lineup is someone from the home team. Marquis Lofton serves as KPVU's program director, and I have to tell you, the sound of KPVU, particularly the new sound of KPVU, is in large measure the product of the genius of Marquis Lofton and his working with our on-air staff. If you're a listener of KPVU, you know that we recently adopted a new signature brand, the 91.3 KPVU, the Art of Soul. And to that end, Marquis has been the chief content originator, director, the person that really manages our daily lineup and our daily playlist and our program schedule. And again, in the interest of full disclosure, Marquis and I have had a life experience, a professional experience in front of both of us coming to Prairie View A&M University. Marquis, he'll get into the inner workings of his professional experience, but I will say he is a proud graduate of Clark Atlanta University and served in a couple of three capacities at the renowned Clark Atlanta University's WCLK. And so Marquis, again, thank you for joining us, and you're up.
All right, thank you, John. Can everybody hear me clearly?
Yes, we got you.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate that. Thanks to everybody who's on this call here. Everybody who I haven't seen in a while, and everybody looks like the same.
You don't know about that, but thank you for the good thought.
Everybody looks good, but yeah, I mean, you just want me to go into.
Yes, just jump right into your background, beginning with your background, Marquis.
Well, you know what? It's interesting now. I was introduced to public radio because it was kind of like walking in a room, like, hey, what's going on here? What's happening? You know, 'cause that's really what happened. I just walked into WCLK, like, what's happening in here? What's going on?
And this is as a student at Clark Atlanta University.
As a student. My initial thing was to play in the band. Now, I wanted to play in Clark Atlanta's band. That didn't work out. I went to the television station, KPVU-TV. They said, why don't you check out the radio station? And so I walked down to WCLK right down the hall. And right then and there, there was the office manager at the time was Shanita Vanish. And Shanita Vanish she went to Howard University as well. And she kind of took to me because I was born in DC. And also my friend, Majima Pickett, who was actually working with Spotify now. And we both went to the radio station as students at the same time. WCLK took us both in and really gave us an opportunity to get a lot of hands-on experience and a lot of production experience and learning from the people there, whether it was Ken Daly or Bill Clark, who was really crucial in my matriculation there. Also Wendy Williams and Glenn Simmons and a lot of great people I was mentored by during that time I was in school. And Jamal Ahmed, he was close to my age, but he was a little bit older. So we kind of really connected because we were like two young guys get into jazz. And at the time, a jazz radio station at a university, the students, I think, were a little bit, they just weren't really connecting with the jazz station in a sense because it just wasn't the popular music for them. They were familiar with it. They knew about, you have students that play in jazz bands, things like that, but they just weren't familiar with it. And I think that I'm really a good bridge. Generation X is a good bridge, but I consider myself to be a good bridge between things. That's what I pride myself in doing, really bringing things together from one end to another end, And so with WCLK, it was me. I had knew about jazz because I was a hip hop kid. And so, Tribe Called Quest and those groups turned me on to people like Roy Ayers, Donald Byrd, things like that. And that really kept me into WCLK because it was like I was digging for samples. I was in this musical cave. And we couldn't wait to go to WCLK. But I noticed something was different because I had a commercial kind of sense of radio. And I noticed that the way that they raised money was different because they came directly to the audience and asked, if you like what you hear, donate directly to us. Call us up. We'll answer the phone right now. And that was a little different. And when I got to learn how to persuade people and urge people to reach in their wallet and support a public radio station, like that's a skill in itself. And that was something that I was very nervous about when I first started doing that. And when I watched people like Nwandi, watch people at WCLK pitch, that was intimidating, But when you realize how the operation works, then it starts to make sense, and you start to understand how it makes sense. And that's one thing I definitely want to send out to the students out there, is really take an effort to learn how the operation works. Because when you learn everything from the inside and the outside, it starts to make sense to you. It may not make sense. I show students things all the time here in the production room, and sometimes it might not make sense at first because it seems like it's like this big picture of things. But when they start to really see who's on the air at what time, so this is why we need this at this time, then it starts to make sense. So,
hey Mark, we're a little short on time. We're going to come back to you because I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to get a bit more in detail, in depth with your experience and expertise. Not the least of which is, you're being able to, as you intimated, connect the generations that listen to our station, KPVU. And, to that end, coined the phrase, we're the glue between the generations.
Yeah.
So we'll get back to you, but I want to make sure that we have time enough to get to the next grouping of individuals who make up this panel today. And I have to say, it gives me personally great pleasure to recognize what we've deemed as the public media next generation stars. However, let me recast that refrain to say it's not the next generation, it's the now generation. And to the extent where today we've got individuals who, as part of this now generation, strive for great diversity in public media. And to that end, we're excited to learn and listen from these individuals who present both the present and the promise of public media and its mission and meeting its mission. So first up, I'd like you to give your attention to LaShawn Hudson, who's representing Atlanta Public Broadcasting, and her current assignment is multi-platform senior producer, on-air host. LaShawn, welcome to the panel.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here and to share my journey in public media and just to tell you about my whole entire journalism career. What I will say is that when I look back and I think about my career overall and how I ended up at WAVE, which is the Atlanta NPR station, basically it's a full circle moment. My career in journalism started not immediately after I graduated college. Right after college, I took a job at Bank of America, and then I also did an internship at a local newspaper in Richmond, Virginia. I graduated from Virginia University with a bachelor's in mass communications. And so basically—
Say that school again.
Virginia Union University.
There you go.
And for pride. And so I graduated from Virginia Union, and basically I didn't get a job right after college. I actually took a job at Bank of America working in a call center at the height of basically the recession. Basically, this is during the time when basically Obama had just taken office and the country was really in a bad place. And so I took a job at a call center where I was getting calls every single day about people with overdraft fees, and it was crazy. At the same time, my nights and weekends were spent interning at a local newspaper. And so one day I'm sitting at my cubicle at Bank of America, and I had a few of the articles that I had written for the newspaper posted where I could see them as I was taking calls. And it just dawned on me, it was like, one day I'm going to wake up to a nightmare, or I'm going to pursue my dreams. And so shortly after that, I did some research. I came across the Atlanta Association of Black Journalists. I took a trip to Atlanta because I had family there. I went to a meeting, and I immediately understood that this was an area that I needed to be in. I needed to be around people that were doing the work that I wanted to do. And so I quickly kind of positioned myself to move to Atlanta and basically just hit the ground running. And when I say hit the ground running, basically I started freelancing for the Atlanta Post newspaper. And then I also started producing a television show that basically aired on the station that I now work for, basically at that time. I worked in contact with the Hughes and public affairs television show that basically talked about all sorts of topics. And I was a producer, and it was a way for me to really learn writing, writing for television. It was, I was mentored by the great Angela Robinson during that time. And like I said, at the same time, that show was actually airing on the station that I currently work for, which I had no idea that would even happen. I think Steve Jobs has a saying that you never can connect the dots while you're doing it, only when you're looking back. And so fast forward to all of that, I went to a conference and I got offered a position to basically start a position in Michigan at a news station in Michigan and working in broadcast television and news. And so when I was when I was actually deciding whether or not I was actually going to take the job, I listened to NPR, which I would listen to my current station, WAVE, and I heard a segment that a gentleman was talking about why people choose work they hate and why they choose jobs they love. And so the guy was explaining that if you had the opportunity to choose a job in Freezing Cold Michigan, would you choose it? would you take that job? And the guy was like, well, I'm actually going to play the devil's advocate here. I actually will take the job because I love Michigan. It has, you know, all the sports teams. I love snow, X, Y, Z. And so at the same time I'm hearing this, I am debating whether in my mind whether I want to leave Atlanta to take a job in Michigan, because I'm like, I need to like work full time in journalism, but I'm also nervous and scared because I have no idea what's ahead. So I listened to that segment on public radio, and that is what actually propelled me, like really inspired me to take that leap of faith and to move to Michigan to take my first journalism job. And through that, I mean, I worked with Saginaw, Michigan. I've also worked in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and also Charlotte, North Carolina, and most recently right now I work back in Atlanta. And so at the station where I produced a television show, where I heard the segment that basically, you know, you have to take that leap of faith to pursue your dreams. And it's just like, it's a full circle moment.
Can I get you, can we take a pause? We're running short of time, and we're going to circle back around to Sean, but I want to make sure we get our other now generation colleagues in the mix. Jamie Green is joined us today, and it's just amazing. We have such a diversity of talent, skills, and ability, but Jamie comes to us again as a public broadcasting Atlanta employee, and her particular assignment right now is that of a radio producer report. So Jamie, let me get you to jump in, and we get about 5 minutes from you, and then we'll move right along.
I'm gonna just give a quick little, I think you got me and LaShawn switched. Which is, because we both do a lot of things, you know, both stations, so I think that's fair.
Okay.
But thank you so much, John, for being here. I feel honored to be on this Zoom call with all these amazing colleagues. I pretty much have had the privilege of working with everyone on this call, and if I haven't, I've been impacted by your work, from Steve to Mel to Marquise, because you've all been a Aisha's journey, which is part of my journey. And so I thank you all for just doing what you've done, especially Stacey, because you built an amazing woman that is what looks like to the left or the right of me on my screen, maybe not to you all, but she's the reason I'm in Atlanta. And so in short, you know, I'm from New Jersey, small, very small town. So I grew up watching WNET and went to Morgan State, woo-woo, HBCU alum.
HBCU.
Yes, you know. And when I came to Morgan, I had two amazing professors, Professor Eric Dotson and Professor Pia Jordan Winters. I'm going to mess up her name if I don't do it right. But both of them had relationships and had contributed work to Maryland Public Television. And when they saw me as a student, I was the girl, doesn't look like it now, who wore Nike flip-flops and sweatpants to class. I was that chick. And so there's someone that's probably watching that's probably got that on right now. I'm Zoom talking from home. But I was her. And they saw something special in me. They knew that I was ignited with a fire and passion for journalism, for storytelling, and just for production. And go figure, I would end up working for public media. But I didn't see myself doing it. I was like, I'm gonna work for BT, I wanna work for all these big names that I saw growing up, people that looked like me making a name for themselves. And of course, I also wanted to be this anchor woman. You know, I had all these visions, but like life will teach you, it never goes the way that you plan. And so after graduating from Morgan, I ended up working for the university for some time and working and then, you know, odds and ends jobs, but I always stayed faithful to my career endeavors, which was being in media. So I eventually landed a job working for WNAR ABC News, so I have a commercial media background, and I worked there for several years. I started as an assignment editor and worked myself up, like you hear many of us, going to do special projects, producing investigation journalism, documentaries, the list goes on and on and on. And I was ready for something different. News is a hard world, and if you're not built for it and if you're not ready for it, I want you to say you need to get a mentor to help you keep encouraging, because in those newsrooms you have to fight for yourself. And I mean that as a person of color, but also just as what you feel needs to be the story of the day. And so often you're in newsrooms, and I used to run newsrooms to help encourage those topics. And I wanted something different. I am someone who does not want to feel stifled in their career, but I also didn't want to change for desk. And so this is my pitch to public media. I applied. I actually found a job on LinkedIn. And that's a great place to look because there's a lot of job openings, just FYI, currently. And got a call, and it was from our HR director who eventually connected me to Aisha. Was flown out to Atlanta, and FYI, this was the first job I was ever flown out for. All my other friends that were in media and they were anchors, they were like, "You've never been flown out?" It's like, no, I don't know what that experience is like. And Aisha then saw me. I was a little intimidated because I had to meet, I think, 5 people that day in a boardroom with white walls. And I was like, what am I about to get myself into? But I had family here. I knew Atlanta. Atlanta was a second home. And there was a connection that I felt with those that were in the room with me. And, Aisha just pretty much ushered me here to Atlanta. And has been an exceptional, I have to say that, exceptional mentor, friend, and colleague, and has truly built the woman that you see right here as far as the producer, the on-air host, the voice of HLPVA. So every time you're hearing "Tonight at 6," that's my voice, which is so awesome. Cartoonist, I worked with AJ, who you'll probably hear from shortly. And documentary. I've just done so many different things, and I love public broadcasting for that because it really is a mecca of all things. You can be whoever you want to be here. You can be proud to wear your Afrocentric scarves, and you can be, as beautiful and as bright as you want to be, and allowing yourself to stay true. Sometimes when you get into these new organizations, they want to dumb down that color a little bit because they have a strategic plan or they have a look to that. They really do allow you to be yourself. And as a fellow storyteller like in Wandi, I've had the privilege of just creating some amazing content, just recently content to complement Henry Louis Gates' Black Church here in Atlanta. And it was a great opportunity. And AJ is a part of that. Thank you. AJ is a part of that. There's so many others that were on this call that also did that, and so many other things. And so I say, if you're discouraged or feeling like you don't know where to go, public media is the way to do it. Awesome. With anyone, can I just tell you this? Like, if you are really fantasized by I want to work at big names in media or in the world of entertainment, then you need to go to public media. I've met so many well-known celebrities. I've worked with David Oyelowo. I got to produce him. How many times can you say you produced a major movie star in your studio that you may have otherwise never gotten the opportunity to do? And having a goal into film at the end of this journey of mine of media, to be able to already be doing the things that I've dreamed about doing in a matter of a couple of years is a blessing. So, faith forward, reach out to your fellow HBCU alum, be encouraged, all of those wonderful things.
Thank you. And speaking of AJ, we're going to pivot to Alfonso Whitfield, who is the Director of Photography, Producer, and Editor. Am I right, Alfonso?
You got it.
Awesome. Welcome to the panel.
Yeah, glad to be here. Hello, everybody. I guess I'll start with how I got into public media, and that I feel like I'm the journalism interloper, as I went to school specifically for fine art photography. And after I graduated with a bit of more of a commercial edge to it, I left that market completely and moved all the way into film. And I mean, I still do photography now. It's a great thing, a second business of mine. But I started out working in reality TV, working on union film sets, working on commercial sets, and really just bouncing around all that. And I never really saw myself ever getting into journalism. But I think the essence of journalism is storytelling. And the biggest thing that you're going to encounter in a media career is storytelling. It's key. And it's all very, you really have to hone in on very different aspects of writing and different aspects of understanding what's going on in a community, whether it's written to be fictional or non-fiction. It's just very important. So as I bounced around from reality set to reality set and did a lot of different things, I ended up sort of finding a friend who brought me in. She was no longer with PBA, but she brought me in because she said that, there's a need for some more storytelling here at PBA. I took the job after 9.5 years being freelance, and I couldn't have found a better place that wanted to push and push the boundaries of everything that you can consider just media in general. When it came to making television and interstitials, public media showed me that if you can find a story and really defend it and also be open to a lot of different ideas, you can come out with a product that you're never going to get in an institution much like no shade to CNN and all those big companies, but I think like I forget who said it earlier, you have to follow a lot of set plans and patterns. But in public media, you're able to express very freely and very authentically. And that is something that I think is extremely important and needed. And public media has shown me that, you can really be a true voice for the people here. And, and that's any and all skin colors. As we've seen in Atlanta, there's been some shooting. And it's really up to the local voice to be a part of that larger chorus. And public media has really allowed me the chance to do that with things that I actually care about. We read a lot of news everywhere, but it all starts grassroots. And if you're able to figure out just a base idea and see the environment around you, the ecosystem, and what people like and love and want to hear about, and bring that to a public media organization, there's no place that story can't go.
Great. I hate to have to cut you off. We're about 2 minutes from wrapping up, but I wanted to allow Dr. Blackwell to come back in and offer up any questions for the group before we have to sign off. Dr. Blackwell, can you hear us, and are you with us, and are you able to submit any questions for the group?
Sure, I can do that. We'll do just a couple.
Well, I know that we're tight on time. But
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Let's start with are there any unique challenges to working in public media compared to privately owned media? We've heard some things about the perks and things like that. So I guess just kind of thinking about the other side. What are some of the potential challenges or obstacles you face in the public media world compared to privately owned media? Just for any of the panelists.
Sean, you look like you want to jump in.
Well, I was going to say, I just want to make sure I understood the question. Can you repeat the question again?
Are there any unique challenges to working in public media compared to privately owned media? And if so, what are they?
I personally would say the first challenge that I noticed coming from where I did was that you should think where in private organizations and freelance film sets, you can be naturally fearful of reaching out to other departments because there are certain silos built up. But in public media, there isn't that. And I think mentally, just being open to the different people within public media is good. Like reaching out to other stations, you shouldn't be afraid to, just talk to people. Maybe that's not necessarily a challenge, but I think for people coming into public media, you may consider that you need to stick to your job and do your one thing. But much like everyone else has said, you can learn a lot by just talking to someone else and taking up a new skill or trade.
Just something to say that there's not as much money. It's not as resourced. So when you come from an industry where there's like an endless amount of resource and you don't have to think about budget and you don't have to ask, well, how much money can I spend? You can just do your project. I think that is an adjustment for people coming from privately held media companies or commercial media into public media. But the flip side of that is you have a lot of autonomy because you're kind of deciding, how the scale of your project based on how much money you have the ability to raise, or, if you can collaborate with your development officer. Sometimes you as a producer can have a lot more say than you would in a commercial or privately held media company. So there's like two sides to every coin. So there's less money for public media, less resource, but there's a lot more autonomy because you get to actually talk directly to the person who's raising the money.
If I can say, just to add to what Aisha is saying, yeah, my budget's coming from Turner to Georgia Public Broadcasting, about 1/5 of the programming budget. However, it makes you a much better producer. So I go back and I still have budgets from 30 years ago. A lot of that is just waste. So it's not to say that we shouldn't try to increase the amount that's actually being invested in programming on public broadcasting. But we also don't want to go so far as to say, oh, we need to have sushi for every meal that we cater. Not necessary. As a producer and an entrepreneur, I'm really happy to have worked in public broadcasting because I know how to actually produce with a very small budget, really good, high quality.
That trade-off sounds relevant for HBCU students. We're used to the limited resources, making the most out of it. So I think that's a good comment. I'll just ask one more. So can any of the panelists talk about the experience of creating children's media or family-friendly media content, and what that's like, what challenges you might have doing that sort of work?
I can speak to that a little bit. So one of the projects I actually got to work with Alfonso on was the grant. And so that's one of the departments we're talking about as far as resources picking up with Wells Fargo. And we got to create a hip hop cartoon, essentially. And it was a part of the science lab production. And hopefully it's something that we'll continue going forward with in this new fiscal year. But essentially it was a content that we wanted to help integrate Atlanta public school systems and what they were doing in the classroom. And then, of course, providing an educational tool, which happened to be just an activity. And then we allowed it to be around our kids programming. I think that for me personally, having been a part of that and also having been a part of the national conversations around kids programming, we rely on the bigger picture projects. And if we're doing anything locally, it's tying it to our local educational institutions, right? So obviously for Atlanta, it's reaching out to APS Systems, which is Atlanta Public School Systems. It's reaching out to the Clark Atlantas, the Morehouses, and just universities and institutions as a whole, and how we can create programming that can help parents at home get through right now COVID and having kids at home and keeping them entertained and being educated. I think the only challenge with that is that it requires a lot of extra work, and most of kids programming, if you look on PBS, is animation. And so most, and I maybe in Wandi, Stacey and Aisha can speak to this, but from my experience with public broadcasting, most of that is a national conversation and national projects that are going on. It's not necessarily localized.
Yeah. Well, certainly. I children's television is a large part of what I work in, both in commercial at Turner. I produced Feed Your Mind for many years, as well as working on Earshine and other children's programming for Georgia Public Broadcasting. The amount that people are willing to invest now in children's programming is very low. The reason we were able to produce, for instance, Feed Your Mind at Turner Broadcasting is because there was a belief that the FCC is going to regulate a certain amount of what they call KPVU, educational television for children. As you know, the FCC doesn't really provide regulations as far as the education of people any longer. So that funding source is pretty much gone. So if you think about local programming geared towards children, it really has to, it's only being generated, as Jamie was saying, through school systems and so forth. We might think, as those of us who are currently parents or want to become parents, that we might want to put a little more pressure on what the system could be so that we can have a more robust system of educational children's programming. And some of that needs to be local.
Sure. All right, well, I do know that we're just a little bit past time, but I don't want to end without giving the panelists an opportunity if there's anything that
they would like to add, any closing comments or advice for students. This is an opportunity for anyone who has anything else.
I wanted to add some stuff about kind of an extension of what Nwandi was talking about in her presentation about when you're the only person of color in the newsroom or in the media organization that you might find yourself at. Because as Mel mentioned, there are a lot of opportunities right now for people of color to work in institutions that are predominantly white, media organizations and companies that are predominantly white. And so there are challenges that come with that, especially I think maybe coming from an HBCU, you're coming from an environment where you're amongst people that look a lot like you and probably really understand you, and then you go to an environment where maybe they don't understand you. And finding that mentor, finding that sponsor, that person to support you, encourage you, and hold you down when times get hard, I think is so important. Several of these people on this panel have been that for me. I want to tell a quick story about Nwandi. I was producing live television, which was one of my favorite things to do at Georgia Public Broadcasting. And one night, one of my white colleagues made a racial slur, racial remark while we were live, and I completely lost my cool and just went off. And like, you're not gonna talk to me like that, and da, 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 you know, because I was the boss. So I'm like, oh, I'm about to show him, you don't get to do this to me in front of my team, in front of my crew. And I will never forget. And Nwandi pulled me to the side and she said, did you get the outcome that you wanted? Does your crew respect you more or less after you lost your cool as the leader of this production, as the producer tonight? Did you get the outcome you wanted? Was that the way that you really want to respond? Well, let's evaluate. I was just so fortunate. She was my one of my guest hosts that night. I was producing her. She was hosting, and man, that changed the whole way that I responded to those kind of situations. I learned from Nwandi, and she actually in that moment she coached me and helped me get myself back together. But she also offered me some resources, some books to read, some ways to rethink the way I operate as a leader in white spaces. And so you gotta have people in your corner that are going to keep you on track when you get off track, hold the mirror up to you so you can see yourself, so you can see when you're great and also when you're not great, when you need to be corrected, when you need to be checked, or when you need to woman up, when you need to man up, when you need to be better. And so I just want to emphasize that sometimes it is hard, but when you have people like this around you, you can do it. You can become amazing.
And Dr. Packer, let me quickly extend Aisha's point. And this might be one of the most profound distinctions between commercial media and non-commercial media, public media. And it's the collegiality that you see demonstrated here on this panel today. We all know each other, we respect each other, we depend upon each other. There's a kindred spirit between us that it's just natural. It's probably analogous to going to an HBCU, where there's a comfort zone based upon the support that we are able to provide one another that, frankly, doesn't exist perhaps in any other medium. And it's not just us or we alumni from Georgia Public Broadcasting. We obviously know, love, and honor each other, but we know our brethren from the other public media organizations. So we can reach out across the country to other public broadcasting organizations that have people of color and just leverage the experience, the expertise, and most especially the fraternity, the sorority, the collegiality of our fellow public media brethren. And I think that it's important for our students to know this, and frankly, the real promise that I was speaking to of public media for the now generation, they've embraced this. The reason that public media will ultimately find its success and footing and is because of the now generation. And we were just really happy to have Jamie, Alfonso, and LaShawn here today with us to be able to speak to, that promise of, the now generation and the impact that they're going to have on not just public media, but the impact that they're going to have in our society. You talked about true democracy. True democracy is going to occur based upon the work and the ethics and the fortitude of these young folks who we've got working with us now. So we want to thank you, Dr. B, for the invitation to present today. And, we're not going anywhere. We're here to serve. And we're happy to, to weigh in when and where Prairie view and University can use.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Once again, we want to thank all of our panelists who are here today to share wisdom and experience and tips that I think will be very valuable to our students here. We want to thank Mr. Hughes for recruiting this panel, putting it together, and for moderating the discussion. Did an excellent job. We covered a lot of ground today. We talked about some of the things that if you were unfamiliar with public media before, you've been sold on it perhaps in some ways, right? It's smaller stations which allow you to get a broader variety of experiences. You heard about the ways that public media is welcoming to diversity. And we really kind of saw firsthand the community aspect of working in public media and connecting with others. We also heard about public media as a potential way to plug into the entertainment world and potentially work with some big names, which I know will be appealing to some of our students. And we even got some job search tips as part of the discussion today. So we're very grateful for all that was said today. And I just want to encourage you, if you've heard something interesting over the course of this session, to follow up maybe first with our on-campus people who are, Mr. Hughes, Mr. Lofton, others who are right here, at our back door. But also, I know that many of these panelists are possibly open to, virtual communication of some kind. And so Mr. Hughes, I think, has all their contacts and would be glad to share that with us if needed. I want to close by just reminding you that we'll be back this afternoon at pvmu-tv.org/COMM week for our next session, which is titled Balancing Between Worlds, Versatility in Media Careers. Our guest this afternoon is going to be a one-on-one discussion with me and Marcus Sullivan, who is a morning show host at 91.7 FM Engine Radio. He also has his own media platform, Blessed Beats, and he's also a freelance reporter for TMZ. So we're going to hear how he juggles these different responsibilities and shifts back and forth between these different roles in this discussion. Remind you that the career fair is happening tomorrow. And so you want to get registered for that on Handshake if you haven't already. And we just thank you for being here. The recording of this session will be available on YouTube if you want to go back and replay any portion of it. Have a good rest of the day, and I hope to see you at 2.